Hello and welcome to episode 23 of The Bench, powered by Wowhead. Today, joining me is my two good friends, Tettles and Squishy. You can see I'm themed well in the holidays. Squishy, what are your plans for this Christmas?
Not much, honestly. There's still, well, Blizzard kind of put a wrench in my plans. They released a PTR right as they were heading out the office, it feels like, and so we've got some PTR data mining continuing over the holiday season. But some friends, some gifts, good times.
Yeah, there's lots to talk about. They've been posting a lot of news about 11.1. We had the release of 11.07. So that PTR that came out very recently. Is that playable right now? You can jump in and see the new dungeon and everything, or not quite yet?
No, so it's only data mining right now. And the assumption
Oh,
is now that Blizzard is out of the office, we won't be having anything until the new year. So it's data mining only right now. No testing whatsoever, which means that the intricate reworks and dungeons and Mythic Plus changes can't actually be played.
interesting. Yeah. So we kind of have like a lot of weird stuff, right? Like they've been posting things, but they didn't really give context to anything. Like we're still seeing like I saw the big post about the interesting rewards of like the Renown track for the raid or something, or the new faction next season, but there's not a whole lot of context to exactly what all that means.
Yeah, I mean when I saw DINARS coming back, I was like, "That's crazy," and I know we'll talk about that, but the Raid Renown track seems like one of the coolest things that they've added in this pack. Actually, the entire pack seems sick. It feels like the entire dev team went crazy, and basically because it's a goblin patch, they were able to do whatever the heck they wanted, and their design space was do crazy stuff, which seems awesome. So that's really exciting, honestly.
Yeah, I think because they like I think when everyone saw that sort of like landscape of like goblin underground machine, you kind of always get the vibe that they're gonna like be super creative with it, right? Like they're not gonna be constrained to like, oh, there has to be a bunch of dragons, there has to be this. Like when it comes to robots and machines, like they can make bosses literally do anything. Like a robot can be any creature, any animal, anything. So I think yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to the raid and also seeing all the changes. But first, I need some updates. I haven't even logged into the game. We have the new gems and the new ring out. Have you been playing much? What's been going on with the new ring so far?
That's been a shit show, girl. As I mean, very similar to the amulet. It launched severely underpowered because they time gated the gems. Um, and one of the gem slots was a healing gem, which people are not wanting a healing gem. They want their damage gem. And so it launched like equal to a power of a 575 ring, which is horrendous. And people were really, really upset at that for obvious reasons. I mean,
Yeah, that's like normal dungeon, right? Heroic dungeon is 580, right?
something like that. I think 590 was like what Whelpling crests were or something. So it was really bad. Um, I mean, props to Blizzard though. Like you could say what they want, or you can say what you want about them. It should have launched that way, but by Friday they were like, "Yeah, we're releasing all the gems. You can make what you want." And now that people can get the gems, it's actually around a 640 item level, which is good, and that will go up week after week.
Oh, so they've already fixed the time gating of it within the first week.
Yeah, it's already fixed. However, the BIS gems are from a source that is bugged. Have you done the Sirenar like at all?
I have not logged into the game.
Fair enough. Basically, there is there's just events that go on every like 10 minutes. There's like a 3 minute countdown. Like a wall falls. You go in and you kill a rare. It takes like 1 minute. Like to get all your gems, it should take a 10 to 15 minute investment. But what happens is that one event that houses the DPS gems is bugged and doesn't give the gems like 80% of the time. So people are not happy. And I don't
So it's like
expect
an
that.
RNG drop, basically. Like you do the event and you just don't know if you get it or not.
Kind of. I mean, nobody really knows why it happens. There's like a bunch of conspiracy theories as to why it happens. But basically, for some reason, the bonus objective drops. Like the quest that you need to get the gem drops for some odd reason. People have gone full on conspiracy theory, like, oh, tank the boss in the back of the cave and it won't, the quest won't drop. Or don't have hunter pets, or kill it really fast, or who knows. But Yeah, there's a lot of people who don't seem to be able to get it, which does kind of suck. And I don't expect it to be fixed until after the holidays.
Wait, what do you mean? Like, don't seem like they've tried like a bunch of times, or like
Yeah,
you
I
think
mean
their characters
it
could be bugged or something?
yeah, I mean it took like five attempts for some of my friends. My alt, I tried to do it for science. It killed it like at least 10 times. I didn't get it. So I mean, I just bought at some point. I gave up just testing it. I just bought it on my main and sent it to my alt. But a lot of people can't even get it for the first time.
Well, there you go. It seems like they learned a little bit at least from the old system. Like I want to say I remember it took them a lot longer for the other amulet or whatever for them to like actually fix things and like tune stuff or whatever. I'm glad to see them in obviously I would like to see the patch released with things proper, but with them like trying to fix things and changing stuff up within the first week, I think is a good sign at least.
Yeah, I think so as well. But overall, like it's a patch. Have you heard about the exploit though that people are using?
I've heard some rumors, something about changing servers or factions or something. Or
Yeah,
or no, it was yeah, it was factions, right? It was like something about changing alliance horde or something like that.
yeah. So whenever you faction transfer something like that, it resets the quest and allows you to upgrade your ring again. Um, I mean, for me, it's like 3 eye levels at a downtime. And again, I don't think this is gonna be fixed, but if you want 3 eye levels on your ring, you can.
You don't think it's gonna be fixed? Do you think they're gonna do
Well,
anything about it?
I don't think they're gonna fix it. They're all on vacation now.
Really? Is that really how that works? There's no emergency team that can kick it into high gear.
I mean, there might be, depending on the severity, right? If the servers die, they're gonna have a backup server team. But like, I think the devs are mostly on vacation. But
I guess it's not the end of the world for them, right? Because it's making them because you have to pay for the transfers, right? So
I hate
that's
that
the
argument.
reason. That's
I
the
hate that
reason they're
argument
not
so
fixing
much.
it. Yeah,
I
I
hate that
do. I
argument so
do it.
much.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think 3 levels in the ring is gonna matter. I guess is the end all.
But you can only do it once. Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm
Oh.
not.
Oh.
I don't care enough to do it. I don't want to do
Okay.
it.
Fair.
Like,
Yeah. Fair enough. This isn't necessarily the exploit discussion show, especially when it's still ongoing. Maybe the aftermath we can learn more about it.
yeah. But I mean, that was the main thing. I mean, 1107 is what it was, but it seemed like the main thing is right after that we got the 11.1 dev notes, and there was a lot.
It was heaps. It was heaps. There was like so many,
Oh
like
yeah,
everything. And they basically just unloaded everything about the patch, right?
yeah. We got the stuff on the raid. We got a massive amount of class tuning. Like all this here is just class tuning, and realistically, the patch feels kind of like very done in a way.
It was definitely bigger than I expected. I think it's always, I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign whenever you look at your class's patch notes and you don't even know how good or bad it is. There's just like so many different things that are changed and moved and different that you're like, huh. Which I mean, I think it's always refreshing and good to see. Again, it makes me question a little bit like how balance is going to be, but that's for us to figure out later anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, like, you can tell how much they had fun. Like, they reveal the raid boss names here, and some of them are just hilarious. Like, Styx Bunk Junker and Sprocketmonger Lockenstock. Like, these are some crazy names.
Yeah, they were really. It really does feel like a lot of the stuff with the patch, they were like really cooking in the direction of trying to make things more fun. Like being creative with the bosses, doing weird stuff with the renown, the whole driving thing, which we still don't know a whole lot about. Like, it really feels like they're trying to hit that mark of like what's something that no matter what, whether you're like somebody who raids or someone that does dungeons or someone that just logs into farm mounts, like what can they make to have something that at least everyone can enjoy and like have a good time with and laugh about and maybe make some clips. Like, I think they kind of learned that with dragon riding. That was one of the first things I feel like they made in a while where like no matter who you are, when you started dragon riding, you're like, this is sick, like this is really, really cool.
Oh yeah.
And it feels like they're now throwing a lot of darts in a lot of different directions in a good way with just like trying to be creative and like be memorable and make fun patches. This is giving me like I want to say like a little bit of end of BFA vibes when they're kind of just like doing weird, sort of like Mechagon, where they're just kind of like going all over the place and like being
Yeah.
creative and like trying to think of what fun stuff people can do. And I'm definitely getting good vibes from this patch.
I agree, even just the theming. But I like the raid bosses. I know like we haven't released a dungeon journal at Wowhead, but some of the fights actually seem like really sick too. The first boss, Vexy and the Gear Grinders, is like a Mad Max style encounter. The Gear Grinders are like on bicycles, and you have to kill them, and then you can like kamikaze the motorcycles into the boss to remove her armor plating. Like it sounds cool as hell.
Oh boy.
The Cauldron of Carnage is the Mecha T-Rex versus Mecha Gorilla that has been in like every promo so far. Rick Reverb is like a DJ boss. Styx Bunk Junker is a garbage boss, like garbage literally, not like terrible.
Well, we
Sprocket
don't know if it's terrible yet. It could be a garbage,
it could
boss.
be, but it's themed around trash. So wow, that is confusing thinking about it the way I just described that. Sprocket Lock and Stock is some like weapon boss. I don't remember exactly much about that. The One Arm Bandit is a slot machine boss where you have to like roll certain things on the slot machine, and depending on what you roll, you get a different phase or something. It seemed interesting. And Mugsy is a two-headed ogre that has different abilities based on which side of the room they're on.
A two-headed ogre head with the name Heads of Security. That's
Yeah,
pretty good.
I like it. But yeah, like that's awesome. Like not gonna go super in depth there. We have the Big Mama in the Operation Floodgate. Pretty good name there too. But overall, seems crazy. Moving on to classes, Growl. There was a lot.
Oh yeah, there was heaps. Like I glanced through and I was looking at like the Resto Druid ones and some of the changes, and there's just some of these classes have a lot of changes in here. Like there was like almost you would say like full talent tree reworks on a lot of classes. Like I think Druid has a lot of changes. Hunter looks like they have a lot of changes.
Yep.
Mage, I don't know if it's a talent tree rework, but there's a lot of mage changes as well. They're definitely like trying to the Mistweaver dev. I've been really happy with the way that the direction that Mistweaver's gone. It feels like there's just not a lot of variability in talents, and they're really trying to like buff some of the more alternative play styles and like give people different builds to play. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know. I don't know about you, but to me, it's almost like a little bit overwhelming. Like, I don't even know where to start or like what to assume off this other than to wait and see and be able to play this out.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think there's just like the big stuff, right? Like going back up to Druid, you mentioned Druid, and Druid got the long-awaited Druid class tree rework. That thing has like the Druid class tree has been pretty hideous since its inception. It was one of the first Dragonflight talent trees shown, and didn't get revamped. And then it got revamped, and it didn't make it any better. And now, from what I've seen, it's better. Have you looked at it, Grell?
I kind of glanced through the changes. I don't really know 100%. Like I don't have a final verdict yet. I mean, so to clarify things too, when we talk about a talent tree being bad, it's really tough in a team-based game to have these trade-offs of like damage or healing versus utility. Like let's say you're playing a single player game, you're playing like Elden Ring or something. You can make those decisions for yourself, right? Like, oh, I want more tools or I want more damage or I want more this. But in a team game, like it's kind of weird to be, like it's almost like you would always prefer your teammates to just skip the damage and skip the healing and bring everything that's good for the team. But, you never want to do that. You always want to just take the maximum number of damage and healing. And that was a problem with the Druid tree for a long time was you had to have so many trade-offs and there were so many like important utility and damage nodes on the tree that I'm really hoping that they do away with them a little bit. Like I hate to say that they should make all the class trees weak because then it kind of feels unimpactful. But if there is less sort of important nodes, then it feels a lot less bad when you aren't able to take stuff. So I don't know. What are your initial thoughts if you've looked at everything?
So I haven't gone super in depth, but the main thing that I think like people have been saying is it's better. This is what, like, I don't play Druid anymore, and unfortunately I'm like an Evoker one trick, so I didn't look too heavily at this. So I think Tettles and you after this would be able to tell me a lot more personally. But this bottom part is the part that is kind of looking very different essentially. Like, it's still separated into three, but the talents there are organized in a way that you're not making really odd choices essentially. The interesting thing for balance as well is I believe they have the solar beam kick here. Instead of it being on their class tree, it's on the, or sorry, on the spec tree, it's on the class tree now.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Wait,
but
where is that?
it is on the class tree, in the dead center of the class tree.
But only if you're a Moonkin.
Yeah, so if you swap this to
Interesting. Okay, because I was looking at the resto. Yeah, that's why I was so confused.
yeah, if
Okay,
you swap it to Feral, that's replaced by Skull Bash. So now,
oh,
if you
so
go
basically
to,
they, yeah, okay,
but
that makes
Resto
sense.
still has Skull Bash there. It's specifically Boomkid is not allowed to take Skull Bash anymore. Instead, in its place, they have the Solar Beam talent.
It makes sense. It does feel a little bit awkward. Like, not many other classes or any classes feel like they have that problem, but it did feel like it was a little weird putting kick in the class tree for Druid. Doesn't I think Shadow Priest still has that problem
Yeah.
too, right?
I mean, I do think, like, in terms of pathing, the middle is a lot less convoluted. If you compare it to the old one, like, this one has a lot more, like, place it, like, you could take multiple paths to get back to the same thing. The old one, like, diverged a lot. There were a lot of side paths, like, with only one way to get there, which made things really difficult. So I think overall, like, Druids from what I've heard, are very happy with this one.
That's good. It still concerns me a little bit, like looking at how separated the bottom area is. You know, like one problem that you sort of have with Druid is like there are certain nodes that they put deep in the tree that you might not consider. Like for instance, in the very bottom left is incapacitating roar, and I mean, while that is a bear spell, quote unquote, like that's a very useful spell for every single spec, and having to go all the way down there for incap roar has sort of been a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just have to wait and see to play around it a little bit. There is some interesting things I'm seeing too. Like for example, is this the return of like I don't remember how strong it was, but the Kyrian link thing or whatever. What is this symbiotic relationship in the bottom right?
Yeah.
Your self healing also heals a bonded ally, and then when you heal them, it also heals you.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
guess
like,
that's not really Kyrian. It's only Kyrian one way. I guess I thought it was gonna do damage too, but it's
yeah.
only healing.
I feel it's like it's better for Resto. Like, I can see some use of it from Guardian. Like, if you know, somebody like a DPS is taking really heavy damage or something, you can symbiotic relationship them and then, like, frenzied regen to heal them a little. But it's only like 10% of the amount, so, like, how useful is that even?
Yeah, I
Um
guess I can kind of see it having uses in different levels. You know, almost always at the highest level, you have situations where there's like one class that's very vulnerable or squishy or whatever. And then on top of that, like at the lower level, well, you know, you might have one player in your group that seems to be taking more damage than average and being able to just decide, okay, let me link this one guy and give him healing. But again though, that's the kind of node that I was talking about that I think is good. You know, that's like you're not gonna feel like you're completely griefing your build by missing out on something like that, but it is something that's still cool to have. That's at least my vibe with a lot of these bottom right nodes of like Forest Walk and Symbiotic Relationship is they're not really like game changing capstone nodes, which is like kind of good, right? Because then you don't really feel bad for missing out on them.
yeah. But I think we'll see what happens here, but I think this was long awaited. I'm sure, like, when the P tier comes up, people can test the new, that new ability, see how it goes, and then people will be able to tell if if it's worth it or not.
And there's a lot of choice nodes. That's one thing I'm noticing right away about. I don't remember if this was like this before, but there's so many choice nodes on the Druid tree. I feel like, to be honest, I kind of like the choice nodes. I know it kind of harkens back to like the talent trees we had before, where it's like, you know, only two or three choices per row or whatever. But I do feel like it makes it a lot more understandable and digestible when there's like okay, you get this or this, like you don't have to think about this big math equation of where to put all your points and where to go in the direction of the tree. You can just sort of like decide, do I want, mass root or do I want vortex? And you can never have both.
Hmm. Yeah. So I think that's Druid. The other like big stuff from the notes, since we're not going to cover everything, Hunter got a pretty big overhaul. The Marksman got a complete revamp. It feels like they are not allowed to summon any pets any longer, and they have an imaginary eagle that they use essentially instead. They have access to Lust still, in Marksmanship spec. They're just now officially a Lust class, so no more awkward pull out your pet Lust and put it away type thing. You just have Lust as a Marksmanship hunter, and they have like double taps coming back in a different form. And then also with Hunters, the pack leader hero talent tree is also basically getting a complete rework as well. So Hunters are eating good this patch. I don't play Hunter, so I don't know the changes. And Growl, I don't think you do either. But any thoughts there?
To talk about some things I do know a little bit about. The disc changes are a little bit interesting. They basically, I'm a little worried. Like, I feel like what made disc, they're basically like changing around disc quite a bit in a direction that I don't know if it's particularly good. But I mean, at the same time, like disc has been pretty dominant, like this season, so I can understand if they're trying to nerf it. Basically, the way disc works right now is you get this pet that increases your healing massively, and the more that you cast your damage abilities, the higher uptime you have on the pet. And that scales with haste, right? So later on in the expansion, you have more and more uptime to the point where it's almost up all the time. And they sort of gutted that ability, if you will, where now your main filler smite doesn't reduce the cooldown, only your other abilities. So it's gonna be more decision making, less about just like spamming smite, which might be good. It didn't really feel like Disc got compensated in a way. Like Disc doesn't really have very strong cooldowns right now, in my opinion. They're trying to make some changes, but I don't know. I'm a little bit worried. I think for Raid, it's probably going to play much better for Raid, but for M+, I think I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Holy Paladin, Ellismere wrote an angry tweet on Twitter, but it wasn't really that long. So I'd say HPAL is probably like slightly nerfed, but not really that big of a deal. Like there would be at least 3 Ellismere tweets if it was like a really concerning HPAL patch, but there's only one, and it was like only a couple lines. So
I think one of the cooler things is Holy's finally getting access to Unbound Freedom. I thought it was really weird that Rhett and Prot got Unbound Freedom, but Holy didn't. Because I feel like Unbound Freedom is like infinite uses in Raid recently. Like Brood Twister, you freedom root one other and yourself. Ansarek, free one person and yourself. Like Holy Paladin was always just like the odd man out of that. So I think it's just nice to kind of make that hybrid. Or not hybrid, to make it consistent across all the specs.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind, though, with Unbound Freedom is that it is a choice node with Echoing Blessings, and that basically, Echoing Blessings amplifies your Blessing of Sac, and so that is very, very strong in, at least in M+ scenarios, so in Raid, there will definitely be some good uses of this for sure, but in M+, it's, you'll have, like, making your Sac worse is going to feel not as good.
Do you know what
But yeah, I'm not really... Sorry, go ahead.
I know what I find really odd, I just thought of it, that is not on these notes, is Tempered in Battle. Do you know what that is for Paladins?
Oh yeah. I played enough. Oh yeah, well, I played enough after 11:05 for Tempered in Battle. So have they just like not really addressed it or talked about it or cared about it?
Dude, that thing is an abomination, and I'm surprised it wasn't in these notes.
Yeah, so if anyone listening has been playing much with Prop Paladin, basically, the main build with Prop Paladin, and potentially with other Paladins, because we don't know what it's going to be, whenever they throw out a weapon, it sort of like links you, like almost like a spirit link with that person. And so if one of you takes a lot of damage, it resyncs your health with the other person.
Yeah.
The problem is if you're a tank and you're putting weapons on people and then you're running into packs taking a shit ton of damage, like you're just chunking your team sometimes. And there's so many, there might even be like channels in some of the high key discords dedicated to Tempered in Battle where it's just like you literally get hit by one ability and then you get killed by Tempered in Battle from your tank. And it's been a very weird interaction because at the same time it can be so OP. Like it can be so good in a situation like the first boss of Stone Vault where it's like tons and tons of group damage and not much on the tank, at least for the, besides the big tank hits. It's insane to have your tank being it's basically like immunity to have your health linked with your tank, right? Like you're just a permanent spirit link when you have that
Yeah.
weapon up. And so it's like this weird, like double-edged sword of this crazy good ability sometimes, but it also just randomly murders you other times. And I don't know, like it's kind of weird because I mean it's good, like everybody brings it, it's good. It's just so frustrating when it's not, when the random deaths happen. And yeah, they haven't really touched it or done anything or said anything about it. So I don't know. I guess it stays. I mean, a lot of people don't like stuff like that, but to me, I find it kind of like a funny, cheeky little interaction.
I the funny thing is it's on a choice node. You're not required to take it. And anytime I play with one, I'm like, please don't take that. The number of times I've died to Tempered in battle is insane. The first time I didn't even know what happened. Like
Yep.
It was on Kaiveza, which is a horrific fight to have that on, and nothing was happening. And my like it happened to go during the tank buster, and my health just dropped. And I'm like, what the heck just happened? Like I'm not standing anything. And yeah, that is how I learned about Tempered in battle.
Oh
It
yeah, like when it hits you hard because I mean it's like a spirit link, right? So if the other
yeah.
person loses 80% of their health, like you're losing half of your health bar.
It like Spirit Link works because it's split among like 5 to probably 20 people.
Right.
A two-person Spirit Link is really bad for one of those two people 90% of the time.
It's just such a wild ability. I don't know, like the fact that it's not necessarily mandatory and that it has upside, I think it's cool and flavorful, but I can definitely see people being annoyed by it for sure.
I think a lot of people would prefer it to be an active ability, but I understand that like an extra active ability is like not great for
Uh,
some people. So,
Yeah, but
um
the thing is, I think it would be too good, right? Like if you could somehow like turn it on and off or like toggle it, I feel like it would be insane, you know?
probably.
Like if it wasn't for the random sporadic deaths, it would be just so powerful. They would
Yep.
have to like significantly nerf it.
Yep. So then the last class that I have to mention is Enhancement Shaman. And Enhancement, as everybody knows right now, is doing absurd levels of damage. A lot of it coming from their hero talents. And so what they're doing in this patch is rebalancing their spenders, and their just base melee abilities, essentially. More damage towards the melee abilities. There is a lot of changes for Enhancement Shaman, but from what I've heard initially, this seems to be like a welcome change just because it shifts the playstyle so that, your spenders aren't the only thing that matters, essentially.
Yeah, unfortunately, they talked a little bit about this when they were talking about balance going into the War Within. They basically mentioned that they specifically don't like the idea of a class being good throughout multiple seasons. I actually feel like DPS balance has been pretty reasonable this patch. Obviously not at all times, but Enhancement Shaman is sort of the one standout. So unfortunately, like regardless of what happens to this class, I would be very concerned with this class just going into next patch being total crap.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I'm sure like enhancement usually is one of the most well known, like well theory crafted specs in my opinion. They put a lot of work into it, so I expect to see them give feedback if this rework ends up putting them significantly under. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, did you have something else?
I was just kind of, I don't know, there's just so much. I don't want to say like too much random healer stuff. There's just a lot of priest changes. One thing I was negative about disc priest, but one thing that I think people might enjoy is they made a significant buff to uppies or ultimate penitence. Basically, it was like a very fun talent, but it was in the capstone, or not the capstone, but all the way down to the bottom, and it was very, very hard to get. And it also, they basically doubled the amount of shield that it would give you to help protect you from the fact that you can't move. And
Yep.
they also made it easier to get. So I have a feeling Uppies is going to be something that everybody plays. Because it's kind of one of those things where like everybody wants to play it, but it's just crap. But now I think it's going to, they kind of like moved it in a spot to, they kind of realized that people wanted to play it.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of stuff with Holy too. Holy Priest is like, I think one of probably the least, like, I don't want to. I don't know. It's not terrible this season, but it's like it's so outshined by every other healer right now, and they're basically doing like a very very big changes. They've added like 10 different talents. They've moved stuff around. They're buffing Prayer of Healing a lot, which is like something that you didn't use before. Yeah, so they're definitely making a lot of changes to Priest, which I think hopefully the Holy Ones will be welcome, just because it was so far behind this patch. Besides like early on in Raid when you'd pair it with the Evokers.
Yeah. Although I guess there was one more thing in the class changes that we need to talk about, which is the augmentation evoker change.
Oh, that's its own thing. That's such a
Yeah.
big deal. It's such a big sticking point, the AUG stuff.
Yeah, so for those who aren't aware, in 11.1, Evan Might will no longer affect tanks and healers, but to compensate, the party-only buff closest clutchmates is getting 25% more effective when not in a raid. Um, so, yeah, I mean, Grau, you do high keys. How do you feel like this is going to affect your high keys then?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, like, the one big unique thing about AUG was that it was one of the few classes that could significantly impact your tank and your healer's survivability. That isn't necessarily going away. You still have blistering scales. Like, you're still, have the ability to buff your healer a little bit. So it's not like it's totally gone, right? Like, I mean, Mage gives the healer Arcane Intellect. Um, but it makes it much easier for them to balance it across the board. So, like, the problem that a lot of high keys had this season is it was mostly just about survival, with how punishing the
Yep.
death timer is, how difficult some of the bosses were, and how optimized the routes got. It became a matter of can you survive the key, not necessarily like can you pull big enough or do enough damage. So AUG became such a powerful class, not even because it's that strong damage-wise, but because it allowed your tank and healer to get through encounters where you maybe couldn't otherwise. And it was almost a situation where AUG was insanely good in high keys, and then insanely bad in lower keys where you don't have any coordination and that survivability doesn't necessarily matter. And them doing this is one of the most common suggestions. I kind of didn't expect them to do this, basically making it so they're buffing tanks and healers a lot less and buffing DPS more.
Oh,
But
it
this
literally
was one
does
of the
not
most,
work on tanks and healers. Like, it will not go on
yeah,
them no matter what. So,
yeah. So I think that they're this is going to make it much easier for them to balance across the board, but it definitely neutered the uniqueness of AUG in that, like, now it doesn't fulfill that role. Now it's basically just back to how much damage does it do, right? Like, is it
yep.
buffing your other two DPS and doing enough that it's doing enough damage that it's worth it or whatever? Sort of like with the same situation with Raid, where obviously you care about the utility a little bit, but um
I
I
think
think it's okay. I think for from a balance point of view, also from the fact that how much people hate AUG, I think it's for the most part good for the game. I think again, if there was sort of like more classes like AUG, like you had other choices for like what you could bring to help bolster your team's defenses, it would be good. But the fact that AUG is literally the only class that sort of does that, it does make it feel really, really awkward. Why does this class buff tanks and healers and no other class does? So I
yeah.
think this was their easiest and most sensible out for what they should do, and I'm kind of yeah, I'm glad they did it. I think it's a good change.
I think right now the 25% is a big buff because you think that at the cost of a slightly nerfed healer and a tank defensives and tank DPS, your DPS are getting a good chunk stronger from it. I think the evokers did the math and it works out to be about the same damage. Which removes it from being mandatory or the feeling of mandatory at the very least from comps, which is good. But with everything else that AUG still has, Zephyr, Rescue Shield, Blistering Scales, if they play Source, Wernstone, Timelessness for threat reduction, AUG still brings a lot to the team. Now, if their DPS is not good, they will probably be ejected from the comp earlier than previously. But I still think that they're probably going to be ran at a good chunk of groups just due of the high groups just because their utility is just really good still in saving people, especially if the meta doesn't change and things continue to like just straight up one shot you.
Yeah, that's partially true, but I think it brings it more in line with the other classes in
Yeah.
that it has competition with its other specs, right? Like for example, you like for source of magic for Zephyr, all those things, you can bring a dev, right? There's not like now you're going to be looking at what is the damage of dev, what is the damage of aug, and like yeah, you get blistering scales, but you're not really getting that much more having an aug than having a dev, and I think that's the biggest accomplishment here is like I feel like specifically dev and um what's the resto evoker called? Why can't I not
Prez.
Prez? Okay, sorry, brain fart there. Dev and Prez really got the short end of the stick because I feel like at least I don't know about Dev, but Prez was like very good this patch, but you just didn't play it because everybody had an AUG and it was like it sort of got forced out of the meta. So I feel like yes, while it's true that AUG has a lot of this good utility, now there's not a lot of like AUG specific utility, right? Like if you want this, you could bring a dev, you could bring a Prez Evoker, you could bring another one of those specs, and I think that'll mellow it out a little bit to the point where hopefully um people, shut up about it and it stops taking over and it's not running every single top key. Um yeah, I don't know. I think it's you know, it's not the most elegant solution that they could have made, but I think it was a, down and dirty, effective change to kind of get it back in line when it was a problematic spec for a lot of people for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Moving on to the next thing. Oh, wait, there's so much to cover.
Oh yeah,
The Mythic Plus changes.
this is the
So
big one.
yeah,
This was crazy when I saw that. I couldn't believe this.
yeah. So starting off with a big change to Depletes, and the 12 plus region, because in an interview, Ian mentioned that the 12 plus, or rather the what is it, the stepping stone into 12s was really rough for a lot of people. And so they decided to address that basically. Um, yeah. So basically, at 12, instead of the Zalatas Guile giving just like a flat health and damage boost, they are now making it so that just the scaling per key level goes up. It to 12% per level instead of 10% level. No weird breakpoint at 12, just a slightly increased scaler. And I think
Yeah,
that's good.
I think they had a little bit of an obsession or like overly concerned with the jump from 11 to 12 being easier, if that makes sense. Like they were very worried about 12 being easier than 11 because of the affix removal, and I think that was very clearly not the case just because of how powerful the affixes were for you.
Yeah.
Like the buffs on the affixes, you get some huge buffs from those things. Like you are not like obviously if your only goal is to time the key, you are definitely sad to see those affixes go. Obviously like from a high key balance week to week perspective, it's great to see those go, but I think there was no reason to have that big jump at 12s unless they wanted to do something special for 12s, like have better rewards or have some sort of achievement. But it really felt like that jump in difficulty from 11 to 12 served basically no purpose to me, and I'm glad to see it go. I still don't even understand the scaling thing. Like why do keys have to scale more after 12? Maybe I'm just not thinking about it from a mathematical perspective, but I know this is going to sound weird, but I think a lot of people's why they didn't have fun this season was because the keystones got squished and it felt like you made so little progress and you ran into a wall so fast. Like instead of going from like 15 to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. It's like, well, you're already at 10s and then you do 11s and then 12s are like giga hard and then, 13s plus are like very tough to pug. And so it's like you're basically only really progressing through a couple of key levels and then you're hitting a wall. And I feel like the more key levels that you get to progress, the more fun people have usually. So I'm kind of in favor of like a bigger spread of keys, at least for like above 10 or like above the
Yeah.
rewards threshold. Like when you're only playing to get more score and like have fun, I like the key levels being more spread out and like less big jumps. I understand the concern for lower levels because they kind of want to group people together, make it easier to find groups, kind of center people around certain levels where there's big reward jumps. But once the rewards sort of go away, I kind of don't really see a reason to ramp up the difficulty more per key level.
So the interesting thing is, Nagi actually did a graph here. And you can see it on the screen. Basically, oops, let me shrink that. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in. There we go. About how things would change. In blue is the season 1 fort. In red is the season 2. So up until like a 17, this actually is better and comes with less scaling.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. Well, I mean, even then though, the 12 still had the big jump, right? Like
And that's
the reason
removed.
it's like that is because that jump was so high at 12s. So while this is still better, you can still see like the steepness of the graph going up. Whereas in my opinion, it sounds silly, but it almost should go down. Like I almost feel like just let people progress and have fun and like move up. Maybe I'm not thinking about things correctly, but I don't see a reason to increase scaling at a certain level. Like I almost feel like it's their safety net to like try and make sure keys don't go too high or whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not exactly sure on it either, but it might just be like they don't want things to scale to like 22 all of a sudden or something like
Yeah,
that. So,
exactly. And much better, right? This is much better than having this unnecessary random big jump from 11s to 12s.
I
So
agree.
I'm not trying to say I'm against the system for sure. I'm just, in my opinion, just leave it be. Like just leave the scaling as is.
Yeah. The other change that they made was a new achievement at 2850. It is the War Within Keystone Legend. And the only reward for it is your keystone cannot deplete from a 12 to an 11. Unless you
Yeah,
actively choose it
wild.
to.
Actually, wild. To me, does it feel like they missed the mark here? Like I
Yeah.
don't does it
Yeah.
feel like who wanted this? Like I guess I don't like okay, if they made an achievement so let's say you had enough score where you had all-time 10s, your key never depletes below a 10 so you can sort of like get your weekly done. I would understand that, right? Let's say they wanted to make a bigger change to the system where they wanted to do something with depletes. I'd understand that. But they're already removing the big jump from 11s to 12s. Why? I guess I just don't really get it. Like, who is this for?
I feel like this would be really good this season. Like,
Yeah, yeah, right. With the big jump, like when
with the
it was
big
like
jump,
20% increase from 11 to 12, this would have been great. But they're removing that.
they're
So,
removing
like,
that.
what
So
is?
I don't mind,
Yeah,
like, it's. I don't mind an extra achievement. An extra push achievement will like help the scene just for the sake of getting an achievement, right? Like, which I think is good. Now, I do think that it is a little weird, just the timing of it, because it definitely would have made more sense this season when there was a jump and you could just keep trying 12s over and over and over again. So, I mean, it's meh, I guess, in the end. Like,
I just don't. It just feels so. I guess I just again I'm not really like, oh, this is a terrible change. Like I just don't really see who is positively impacted by this. Like especially now maybe you did the math exactly. My understanding is this achievement is roughly between all timed 11s and 12s, right? Like
I did not, I did
50-50.
not do the math on this.
I think my math is right or I just made that up. But that's about my estimate, I think. So basically, you need to have several time 12s before this kicks in. So, like, I could maybe understand it if it kicked in really early and it allowed you to be like, okay, once you have all timed 11s or like most of your timed 11s, you could get your key stuck at 12 to like really get that practice in at the higher level to get better if you wanted to. But if it's already requiring like several time 12s to get this score, yeah, I guess I just don't see who it's for. I wish they would speak more about why exactly they did this or what the goal was with this change because it seems like while it's not really bad, it's just like a miss.
Yeah. Overall, like, I don't mind the extra achievement. I think they may like. I think it'd be cool if there was an extra reward here, so that people who want to push can. Like, what I think instead of a 12 here, I'd almost like this. Like, it still feels weird, but I'd rather this be just be 10. If you
Yeah,
do 11s or 12s, then in the avenue of a worst case scenario, when you're doing your weekly keys, you cannot fall below a 10 for your account. Like that might be better just for alts, but I think an explanation on what this is supposed to do would go a long way. Because I
Yeah,
don't think we exactly know.
I think you might be on the right track. Maybe I'm overthinking things. Like with all this talk about depleting, I'm looking at this as if it's supposed to be some sort of a solution. But really, I think you might be on the right track in the sense that it's just an added achievement. Like it's just a little small thing they added to try and encourage people to get their foot in the door, to do a little bit higher keys, like get into 12s for fun, to try and sort of increase the population of people who stick their foot into 12s and don't just give up at 11s. Because, I mean, again, right, WoW is very rewards driven, and if you don't give people a reason, like at 12s, for I think a lot of people really felt like it wasn't worth pushing through that jump, you know, like I almost felt like portals should have been 12s, like have the max rewards at 10s but then give portals to 12s just to encourage people to, you know, go to that level. But it really did feel like it just wasn't worth it for a majority of players to try and make that push from 11s to 12s. And I noticed a lot of people, even like pretty good players, quitting Mythic Plus or not wanting to play Mythic Plus this season, who ended up around that level, who were basically like, well, I don't have a team of people to play with yet. Like I might, but it just isn't really fun for me to try and push through these really tough 12 keys and pugs. Like I'm just going to quit, you know? Whereas maybe if, you know, this achievement will give people a little bit more incentive to get in there, to make some friends, to group up. And yeah, so I do like that aspect of it. It is a nice little, but I mean, I don't know, they could have, the reward is just so weird, right? Like what are, I don't know. It's just so strange to me.
Yeah. The last thing regarding Mythic Plus is the new Zalatas bargain affix, the Pulsar, which only applies to below 12. But, and what this is, we've only data mined it. It is, it looks like it is a pulsar that orbits players. After 50 seconds, the Void Pulsar releases energy to grant creatures Zalatas Gift, which is the failure effect. Players that come into contact with the Void Pulsar empower players, granting them the Mastery and Leech. And this is replacing the one where you have to soak the orbs. That was probably the most hated one for everybody because it was buggy.
So what I actually didn't really understand this. So is your interpretation of this that you want to run away from mobs and on top of other players? Is that what it wants you to do?
My understanding is you have an orb that circles you. So you can never pick up your own orb because as you move, like it circles you like a planet.
Right, yep.
So you basically have to move near somebody else so that it hits that player needs to hit them or anybody else really. More often than not, what I will see like people do, what I'm guessing people will do is range will just move close to melee so that the path of the orb just hits a random melee. Like to me, that's what this sounds like. A lot simpler, a lot clearer, rather than orbs that are going through the floor and walls. So I think this is probably going to be a bigger success.
Does it look like it buffs mobs if it hits mobs?
I don't think so.
Or just, okay, so you're thinking you get an orb around you, it rotates around you, you need to hit your allies with it, and then every time you hit an ally, it like removes it, and then it buffs the group. And if you don't hit your ally within a certain time, then it buffs the mobs.
Exactly, yep.
Okay.
That's what it sounds like, and based on what it sounds like, it's one orb per player. So it doesn't even seem that hard. And you have 15 seconds to do so. So
seems very chill, very easy.
It does seem very chill. We'll see what it is, obviously, when the PTR goes up, but I'm a big fan of this because I don't think Oblivion was bad. I just think it was misguided in how it worked. So,
and then that was the one where it would spawn orbs everywhere and they would go towards the mobs and you'd have to intercept them, right?
Yeah.
And that was, in my opinion, not necessarily a bad affix, but it was just problematic in so many scenarios.
Exactly.
Where like there was nothing, it felt like there was very little counterplay. And it did feel like Blizzard was like constantly trying to hotfix different rooms and like situations throughout the patch to make it work. And holy crap, what a nightmare that was. Like I couldn't believe they were doing that because I would notice the way that the orbs moved and the pathing and stuff was changing. And it just felt like such an unreasonable expectation of like how that affix was going to work.
Yeah, I mean, it was really noticeable, just even on a frustration level, when a mob like charged 2 feet off to the side or like moved to the side of your tank, and the orb just takes like a sharp right turn and just misses you, and you're like,
Yeah,
what?
there's a lot of weird pathing things with the orbs.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, I think this is kind of just a straight upgrade. We'll see how it plays, but overall,
Oh, another thing, and this is how I read this, unified the buffs. So
yes,
basically, all of the buffs do the exact same thing to the mobs now, right? The failure condition for every single Xaloteth's affix does the same thing to the mobs, where it increases their damage and their reduces their damage
yes.
taken by some amount.
Which I also think is good because the haste one is problematic randomly. If you just like let 2 orbs go off on the haste one, sometimes the boss's like spell queue just got completely screwed up, or you have, a caster web bolting you every 0.5 seconds or something like really weird. More
Yeah,
damage can be handled in the same way, just have to be aware of it. This is just like it's nice to know exactly what it's going to be.
yeah, I like that condition too because it's if there ever feels like an unfair overlap, you're not gonna like immediately wipe almost ever, right? Like oh no, we let a bunch of orbs in, like time to press our defensives. You have some level of counterplay. Obviously, when you're like very much pushing the limits of your group, it's not great, but I do like the unifying the downside of it and making it something that feels like it has some sort of a counterplay when because it just helps because there's so many scenarios where, oh no, like this thing happened or the mobs got buffed or whatever, and you never want the buff that the mobs get to feel that like unfair. It should just be like, dang, that sucks. Like that's slowing us down now, and I think they did. That is not a miss. This change.
Yeah. All right. Next then we have the tier set bonuses. These were revealed, and boy was WoW Twit up in arms. Initially, I think people have kind of come around to them. Grau, do you want to like explain what the deal with these set bonuses are?
Yeah, man, this was giving me like Azerite armor BFA vibes, but like even worse. I mean, my understanding of the way this worked is they basically have the same set bonus sort of with like every single roll. Like there's just one healer bonus, one DPS bonus, one tank bonus, right? More or
One and
less.
one melee and ranged are split.
Or melee and range, right, yeah.
Yeah. So the ranged one, each one has a keyword, which is kind of how the set functions. So for ranged, it's jackpot, which is essentially when you just randomly decide to hit you randomly get a jackpot, which causes you to do something cool and powerful, and casting your major cooldown always hits a jackpot. And I think this is the best one. Like the AUG one here that you can see on the screen. Your damaging spells have a chance to hit a jackpot, causing an upheaval at 100% effectiveness that does not knock enemies up. Casting Breath of Eons always hits a jackpot. I think random powerful procs are just fun. And so I'm a big fan of jackpot. Do you have any thoughts on the ranged DPS one?
The healer one just feels very underwhelming. The healer one feels so boring and
Yeah.
uninteresting. Basically, the way, at least that I read, is that the two set for every healer is basically you have a random proc to put a small hot on somebody, and
Yep.
then if they drop below 40%, it consumes that hot entirely and it does the health or whatever. And
Yeah.
then like the four set is like gives you more procs of the hot or whatever, like more things that you do apply that hot.
Yeah. The healer one is not my favorite.
Yeah,
Um.
like yeah, actually, after reading the jackpot one and seeing like, or the random abilities, I'm like, yeah, okay, I could see how this is fun, especially because although it's the same for every DPS, it's like, well, it's not technically the same because you're getting different abilities, right? You're getting abilities from your class. So it does feel a little bit different from class to class, but the healer one is like, yeah, I don't know. The healer one just feels really, really uninspired, I guess.
It's definitely odd. And then like the four sets individual, like the priest one is something like the more insurance you have out, the more healing you do. Whereas the Resto Druid one is like, when insurance procs, you leave a hot on them. So like, Resto almost wants insurance to proc, and meanwhile we go down to like Holy Priest, and Holy Priest is your healing is increased by 1% for each insurance active. So like these are almost at odds with each other. You have your Holy Priest wanting to keep insurance, and your Resto Druid maybe wanting to consume it. I mean, I guess it depends on the strength of the insurance, but it's definitely not my favorite.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. To me, I guess when I was reading it, like none of the things felt that I would change the way I played. That's to me, that's sort of like what I always like about tier sets is they do something that like, okay, I'm gonna switch things up a little bit this season because of the tier set, right? And none of them really felt like for instance, the Druid one, like, are you really just gonna let your teammates drop to 40% health without healing them just to get a free hot? Like, to me, that just doesn't feel right. I mean, maybe. I don't know. Like, if you are actually playing around it, or you like, I guess maybe I just have to see and feel it out. But yeah, I don't know. I was a little bit unimpressed. I mean, look, a lot of tier sets come out and they're not that impressive, so I'm not like that down on this. But it definitely felt a little weird. The only thing I'm thinking is like, and maybe I missed something, but maybe somehow there's even more to this, if that makes sense. Like, you know how they have like this the ring that comes out, like maybe there's something in the Renown track, or like maybe there's something that comes out later in the patch that like increases, like does more, if that makes sense, like adds more to the
Yeah,
proc, or like that's sort of what I was thinking when I saw them unify everything, is that like I feel like they're gonna expand on this system a little bit more.
I think insurances also may have pretty bad effects on the healing economy. I mean, how many times have we talked about the healing economy being like really spiky right now, right? Like the only way that the devs can kill players is by one-shotting them or doing 90% of their health in a single hit, because healers are so powerful that they can top people in, one or two globals. Now, in a world with insurance, this, depending on the power of insurance, doesn't this lead more to that spiky playstyle? Like, if every healer is assumed to have insurance, that means when you have a party or a raid drop below 40%, the entire raid's health is going to ping pong and skyrocket back up.
Yeah, unfortunately, every single little bit of healing power that you have does that, and yeah, it definitely will. I don't think it'll be like noticeably, but it's just another straw that gets added and another pile onto the healer's power of that's unnecessary or doesn't really need to exist.
Yeah, I'm just definitely a little worried about that. Like, depending on the power of that pop, I could absolutely see a world where the like, those mass AoE damage effects, like one tick, it does 50% of your health. The second tick does 50% of your health, and then like insurance pops to save you from that one. Then the healer has to cool down. Like, it could get scary. And
Yeah, I guess I read this as like it's not really that powerful. Maybe it is, I don't know, but it didn't really. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but.
yeah. Then moving on to the tank one, which is each time you take damage, you have a chance to activate Luck of the Draw, causing you to cast your major tank defensive for 4 seconds. Your damage done is increased by 15% for 8 seconds after Luck of the Draw activates.
Oh, jeez.
If there's one thing that I've learned that tanks really love is random proc defensives.
Oh, this is the worst. I don't like this at all.
If it was that in its own, I think it'd be really bad. But the fact is they tied a damage amp to it. So I think it's probably okay. You're treating the random proc as just a flat damage buff, and you just happen to get some minor defensive out of it. It's probably okay. It's, again, like the healer one, just not inspiring in any way. I think it's pretty boring, but...
Yeah, so a big problem that I think I have, if I had to... My explanation as to part of the reason that why tanking sucks is I feel like power creep affects tanks the most. And I feel like they tried to make tanking fun by like massively increasing the amount of time you're in your cooldowns that you can keep your mitigation up. But the problem is they also are trying to make the game difficult, so they're creating this very, like you need to have so much uptime on everything and use all your cooldowns so well with tanks. And the more power they give to, like, okay, if tanks are just giga powerful and this is just like a straight buff, then that's fine. But I just worry that they're going to be now making mobs hit even harder, right? Because they're just assuming that your tank is in meta way more, or your tank is in their major cooldowns more often. Okay, now we got to make all the mobs hit way too hard, and it's like, I hope it doesn't create, like sort of like what you mentioned with healing, this like bigger ping pong, like annoying power creep thing of now mobs are just absolutely insane because tanks are insane, and it's just I don't
Yeah.
think that gameplay is that good.
I think also just like the four sets have different levels of cool. Like, you have the Brewmaster one, which is, your next two casts a Blackout Kick do 150% increased damage and incur a 2-second reduce cooldown. Like, okay. So, it's just like passive damage. Meanwhile, you have Guardian Druid, which is like after you gain Luck of the Draw, your next 10 Druid abilities cast another Druid ability at 125% effectiveness. Like, I'm not sure what to think of that one. Like, what Druid ability is this? And, like, what is that going to be? And then meanwhile, Vengeance gets like the hunt can refresh when you gain Luck of the Draw. So like they're just seemingly very different. But I guess that's no
Yeah, I mean,
different than like regular tier sets. So
yeah, I mean, I guess that's good. I was a little bit worried that they would be too samey, but like, oh, every single druid gets incarn, every single, but I guess there is some difference in the set. I guess I see what you're saying, where the initial response was like bad, but people it might be growing on people. I guess I don't hate it. Like, there's enough different in between each of the four pieces that there's at least something going on with each spec. It's not too samey.
yeah, I think Luck of the Draw can probably like have a small change to it. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the random defensive. Like, I could see it maybe being changed somehow,
I
but
hate the defensive part, but I love the offensive part, right?
oh, the
Like, do you
offensive
agree
part's
there?
great.
Like, if it was just a random proc that just, oh, you just do 50% more damage right now, you'd be like, oh, hell yeah, and then you proc 3 times in a row. Like, to me, that would be awesome with tanks, right?
Yeah,
But the idea of, like, you know, well, that's sort of what I'm worried about, right? Is having to play around it. Like, now you have to have this mental space of, oh, I just procced. Now I need to save this defensive for later because I'm gonna need it. And then like you waste a defensive and you get a proc, and then you're like, now you're behind, and you won't survive the next tank hit.
yeah.
That's what I'm kind of worried about. And yeah, I think just random procs of huge damage would have been way more fun for tanks, I think.
Mm-hmm. All right. The most complicated one is the melee one, which is Winning Streak. Your spells and abilities have a chance to activate a winning streak, increasing the damage of some class abilities, stacking up to 10 times. Some class abilities have a chance to remove the winning streak. This one is very, very different between specs, and it's very odd. For example, if you go up to the Havoc Demon Hunter one, it is winning streak increases the damage of Blade Dance and Chaos Strike and can be removed by Blade Dance and Chaos Strike. In other words, the thing that is buffing, you're going to be pressing it no matter what. There's a loop there, right? Like you slowly gain more damage, and eventually it's going to fall off, and that's fine. But then you have things like Enhancement Shaman, which is the winning streak increases the damage of Storm Strike, Crash Lightning, and Lava Lash, but spending your Maelstrom weapon has a 15% chance to remove winning streak. And that leaves an interesting choice. Because if you never spend Maelstrom weapon, you don't ever have a chance of losing your winning streak. But Maelstrom weapon also does a lot of damage. So there's like two different types of winning streak tier set bonuses, which I think is kind of odd.
I worry that it seems way too complicated, doesn't it? Like, to me, doesn't this feel like one of these things where you're just going to ignore it and then you're going to wait to see what the guide writer on Wowhead says, and then you're just going to do whatever they say and not think about it? I feel like it's just a little bit too complicated. And I think that what you mentioned, where they like differentiated it between different, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what they could have done to make it better. That's like somewhat along the same veins. Like,
I think when it's like Outlaw Rogue is very similar. Increase the damage of Dispatch, Dispatch has a chance to remove it. I think that's fine. In order to get the benefit, you need to press the button. And pressing the button is the thing that has a chance of removing it. I think that's like a fine gameplay loop. Enhancement has the chance for a lot of degenerate gameplay, in my opinion, where the Theory Crafters might find that it is just better to never spend Maelstrom Weapon and keep winning streak permanently. Which would lead to some very degenerate gameplay and some weird rotations. Hopefully that would fix that, but it's also like complicated by the 4-set bonus, which for most of them is when you lose winning streak, you get some powerful benefit. So, for Enhancement Shaman, whenever you gain a stack, you reduce the cooldown of Doom Winds. When winning streak is removed, you reduce the cooldown of Doom Winds by even more. I think the Ret one is really cool. Where was Ret? The 4-set for Ret is when you lose your winning streak, you get the last holy power spent back, and for 4 seconds you cannot lose holy power, and the damage of your holy power abilities is increased by 10%.
Oh, holy moly.
So basically,
yeah,
when you lose your winning streak, you're like, damn, I lost my winning streak, but then you pump for 4 seconds. You just spam your finisher, and that's sick. So I think just like, it just depends on the design of what your, like, how those two work. I think it has the potential to be really good, but I think some of them right now are a little rough and probably need some work as well.
So do these have a timer on them, this winning streak? Or is it just a buff that's always there? Like, basically what I'm asking is, like, can you lose your winning streak by just it timing out, or do you have to press one of the buttons that removes it?
I don't know. I didn't look that up.
Yeah, so I think... I'm trying to think. Yeah, they're definitely... Okay. Yeah, I see how they're cooking now. I don't know if I necessarily think that it's all good.
Okay, it lasts 30 seconds.
Okay, so all right, so now it does have a timer. I'm thinking about the implications for Mythic Plus there, and the idea of, losing your... Yeah, man. Gosh, doesn't that seem a little bit scary? Like playing Mythic Plus, where every single DPS will care or not care about these little breaks, and like you'll have to hurry up and do this RP or like pull this, or oh no, my winning streak is about to run out. I mean, it could be fun. I don't know. It could be fun. I'll try and remain optimistic about this one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But they're definitely, now that I'm reading through everything and like kind of getting into the nitty gritty of some of the specs that I didn't necessarily look at right away, there's definitely enough variety. I would say that healers definitely got the short end of the stick on this one. The healer ones are really boring, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in here, and I think it's not as lazy or like, the same across the board as I thought.
Yeah, like thinking about it after a while, I don't mind the 2-set being the same across specs for the most part. I definitely think Jackpot is the best way to do it, or winning streak to an extent. I'm not the biggest fan of the tank or healer ones, but overall, I mean, 2-set is weird because it feels like a 2-set is just like, it barely matters in a way now these days. A lot of the time, like, the set doesn't feel complete without the 4. Like, the 4-set builds off the 2-set, and the 2-set's usually, like, pretty weak in comparison a lot of the time. And so, I don't exactly mind the 2-set being the same. That might be a hot take. As long as it's good.
I don't know, I think there's some merit to this. I think there's, I'm willing to give it a try. I mean, I don't know, the healer ones are so boring. This is just healer POV here, but I was definitely uninterested in the tier. But reading over a lot of the other stuff, I could see some interesting things going on with these tier sets.
Yeah. All right. The last thing regarding tier sets is the models, and some of these favorite are amazing. Let me go in here a little. So, Grell, have you seen these yet?
I glanced at them. I'm not a big Mog guy, but.
All right. Well, we're gonna go quickly through them. The Death Knight ones. Look. What do you think of the Death Knight ones?
They look pretty sick, actually. I kind of like the Death Knight ones.
Yeah,
I'm not a big theme guy. Like I just kind of like look at it and see how it feels together or whatever. But it definitely like the shoulders with the rings or whatever. Especially, is this the like mythic one or whatever? This very last
we don't
one.
actually know which one belongs to which right now. So
Oh,
these are
that's
all the
fair.
PvE ones, and these are the PvP ones essentially.
I thought I heard some complaining about PvPers. Weren't PvPers like where one side was complaining or something? I don't remember. One of the sides was complaining that the other side would have like better stuff. If I remember seeing a Twitter post or something.
I honestly have not been paying attention to Twitter, so I have no idea.
Smart man.
Yeah, overall, I think the Death Knight's a big hit. I don't like the horns personally, but you know, it is what it is. So moving on to Demon Hunter.
Demon Hunter looks a little weird. I don't know if it doesn't seem very Demon Huntery to me, but it almost seems like a Warlock set. Looking at the last one, like
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they're kind of almost going for like a Warden Cordana Fellsong vibe. Do you know who that is?
sort of.
It's the last boss of
I
Vault
can
of the Incarnates, or the Vault of the Wardens.
I couldn't tell you any lore implications of this person.
That's fine. Uh, it doesn't seem very Demon Hunter. It's very detached. I mean, Demon Hunter tier sets in the past usually have like an exposed belly, and this
Yeah, I
one
mean,
definitely does
part of
not.
being part of a demon hunter is like being like agile and mobile and quick, right? And this seems
Yeah,
like very bulky for demon hunter. Is kind of why I think that.
yeah. It feels like the type of Demon Hunter that's sitting in the gets the desk job instead of the
Yeah,
third job.
it's like an NPC demon hunter, right? Who's just
Yeah.
like in town all the time but doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I like the colors of the PvP versions more than the raid sets. I love this like blue color, but overall, I think this is also really good. Druid, how is Pete Zergling gonna look at these?
Druid has a lot of cool sets. I don't think this one seems that special to me. It looks
Yeah,
okay, I guess. I don't know.
I
Not
don't think
really.
it's great for me either.
Doesn't stand out.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this. The evoker sets, which nobody will ever see, except for the shoulders
Yeah, we'll
and the
just
belt
scroll
on the
down.
dragon.
We just go to the evokers and they're just that's what an evoker looks like. Is their belt and their shoulders.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I think I'm still using the Vault of the Incarnates tier set on my Evoker because it's the best looking shoulders, and that's the only thing that matters. So there you
Yep.
go. Hunter, notorious for getting the not best sets. What do you think of this one?
Almost reminds me of the Demon Hunter one, where it just seems so bulky and not really huntery. Like honestly, it doesn't even look that. It doesn't even look that bad. Like I think it kind of looks cool. It just doesn't look like what a hunter would wear at all.
It almost looks like plate.
Yeah, it does. It looks like if you would have told me this is like a paladin set, I would have been like, oh, this is cool, or like a warrior set even. But
You know what this reminds? The shoulders reminding of Sanctum of Domination.
it does actually. Yeah, I'm definitely getting Sanctum vibes there.
Yeah,
Because I was kind of thinking because I was thinking about the theme of the raid and being like goblin, mechanical, undermine, and I'm thinking, how is this like? This just looks like Sanctum of Domination.
yeah. I mean, you can see a little bit of like the mail on like the back of the head and like the chain there, but yeah, I don't think this is like the best hunter set, but it's definitely far from the worst. We've seen some horrific hunter sets in the past, and I think this is like pretty okay. All right, mage. What do you think?
I don't like the head. I don't like the head. I feel like the other stuff might be cool. I feel like the head is a little bit much though.
It's gonna be like
That almost looks like an evoker helm to me. Like it's almost
yeah.
like it's not really like I don't know. I think it's I like the blue one actually kind of looks cool.
If
The
you
red
asked me
one
what this
is,
was, I feel like it'd be a shaman.
I feel like every single set so far is like that's kind of cool, but it doesn't look like the class that's picked.
Like, I feel like they're going for like elements, like Firebird or like Frostbird. Like, honestly,
Yeah.
this top one kind of looks like a mage one. Like, it feels like fire mage type thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, it feels more like elementalist shaman than mage.
Yeah, no,
to me.
100%. Yeah, again, if you would have told me this was a shaman one, I've been like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
I mean, I like the colors. Like, this very much means frost, like arcane, but yeah.
Earth.
The monk set. What do you think of this?
Let's go to the next one. I don't know. What is this?
It's the monk set.
Not a fan.
Not a fan. I
The
this
helm,
look,
honestly, again, like it just feels like the helm is so out of place. It feels like instead of trying to do like beefy weird shoulders, they're doing like beefy weird helm, and it's just like, I mean, I guess you can always hide the helm. I
yeah,
don't really mind. I don't mind the monks at that. It's just the helm doesn't do it for me. Especially like the red, like those two colors right there, the
yeah.
red and the yellow one. To me, that's not. Nope.
No, okay. For me, I like the look from the back. I think the look from the back here looks good,
I
and the
mean, the
look
look
from the
from the
front,
back, it just looks like it's Vegeta in that top right one.
it does.
Am I wrong? He's
No,
just
you're
about to turn
absolutely.
around and call you Kakarot or something.
I mean, I just don't like the front. Like again, the exposed like chest makes me think this is like a Demon Hunter set more than anything. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean the Super Saiyan set. All right. Um, moving on to Paladin.
Mm, no.
No.
I, again, is this a Death Knight set? Like, am I wrong here? Like, every single set just doesn't. It feels like to me it feels like too sharp and like too empty to be a paladin set. You know, like to me paladin is like bulky and smooth and like to me this is like I don't know, sharp and pointy and yeah, I don't know. Like how's that paladin? What are these colors?
I I don't mind like
I mean, this
okay,
this is a Death Knight set.
I think I would lean it towards being a Death Knight set a little bit just because the eyes. Like these blue eyes, these red eyes make it look so sinister. But
Yeah,
I
I mean
mean,
everything about it looks sinister. Again, I don't even mind it. Like I think it actually looks kind of cool. Like especially like if you like the gold set kind of looks weird, but like the other sets, like I could see that being a Death Knight set for sure.
I actually like this set though. I think like these colors I like. I don't like the silvers personally, but like
Yeah.
gold
Okay.
and silver are absolutely like paladin colors, so like I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I don't hate the gold. Now, well, I mean, now seeing the other ones are for sure Death Knight sets, but this one I can kind of see, I guess.
Okay.
Again, the helm is like, I don't know, it's all pointy and
All right.
fierce and, I don't know.
I like this purple one though. Dude, I swear the PvP colors are just better than the PvE ones.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
alright.
Priest. You got the big star on your helm.
Yeah, all these helms are missing me. I think the rest of the armor looks cool.
I agree.
I think it's a cool mix of like, it's definitely robe kind of cloth priesty, but still like is sharp and yeah, I don't know. I don't really mind this set. The colors are maybe not what I would have picked, but the helm, I think these two, the silvery gray one and the golden one, the helm looks a little bit better. I think
Yeah.
the red and before the helm was like seemed a little out of control, but now that the colors get a little bit more mute, I can see the helm there.
I think as well it's gonna be missing some effects. Like you can see a little bit like shine on the helm. I have a feeling there's gonna be like some extra effects on some of these, which will be really interesting. But I'm a fan of this reset. I think it works. I would probably not equip the helm, but the rest of the set looks fine. All right. Going on to Rogue. I
Eh,
love this set. I think it's so cool.
I just don't really like rogues.
That's fair. But
It's definitely an interesting vibe.
I love the like pirate skull theme they got going on here. I mean, this is my kind of vibe. This looks like a set you get on the trading post. I think it's really good.
Yeah, I think I like the way that you worded that because my first thought to it was like it's very unique in a way. Like you can see how it's rogue, but at the same time, like you're not like, oh, this looks exactly like X set. Like this is like a very unique looking like rogue set, I feel like, where I feel like even if you don't use the whole set, a lot of the pieces you could also like piece together with other things and be
Yeah.
like, this is like the only piece that would fit like that because it's like so unique.
I think a lot of people will use that skull helm just alone. Like that's a really cool helm for
Yeah.
a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, compared to all the other helms too, especially that helm is definitely pretty dope.
Yeah. All right, Shaman.
Ooh, Shaman's looking good. This is a good looking set here, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. It just looks crisp. I love this blue and green. Like I think that would be the one that my Shaman gets. I think.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of the colors look good. I think, yeah, I definitely like the Shaman one. I mean, maybe that's why they The other one looked like Shaman too. They just had a bunch of good Shaman energy this patch, but yeah, this is a cool looking set for sure.
All right, Warlock.
I also kind of like this one. There was that other set that I said kind of looked like Warlock, but this is definitely more Warlock for
Oh, this
sure.
is absolutely Warlock. You got the little like teeth on
Yeah,
the shoulders, like spitting fire or whatever that is. I
yeah,
mean, this is a big hit for me.
yeah. I think both of these, like the helm is more low key, the shoulders are more pronounced and more cool and unique. Yeah, I definitely like both of these last two.
All right, and lastly, the warrior one.
Warrior. Um, eh, it's okay.
Yeah, I
Warriors have a lot of cool Mogs. This doesn't really stand out to me. I don't think it's like terrible, but
I'm getting Necrolord vibes.
yeah, I mean, I'm getting tons of Shadowlands like Sanctum and Domination vibes from like all of these, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, unless I'm misunderstanding the raid. But
Yeah, I think I think the helm's pretty cool. Um, but overall, it I think this one's a miss for me. This one looks this PvP one reminds me a lot of the what is it? Tumas Sargeras one? I think it is.
before my time,
Fair. Yeah, overall not my favorite. What's your favorite one, girl? If you had to pick one.
um, definitely either the Shaman or Warlock. I think those were my two favorites.
Fair enough. For me, I
I'm
think
not
it's the Rogue
tradition.
one.
I'm not traditionally a Warlock main, but the Warlock set definitely looked very Warlocky.
Okay. Um, I think the last thing to talk about is DINARS returning.
This whole what is it called? Renown track is very interesting actually.
Yeah.
I mean obviously it capstones with the Renown or with the Dinars, but there's a lot of very interesting sort of nodes on here.
Yeah, so in the patch, we data mined a brand new Renown track called the Galagio Loyalty Rewards. Great name, by the way. I love it. But this is a Renown track that seems to take place in the raid. There's the current what is Severed Strands raid buff is on there. It gives 3% damage and healing periodically. It gives you a chance of free augment runes from week to week. The raid skip is now on here. There's a teleport to raid option. And there's like move faster in the raid or consume food faster in the raid. And of course the big news is later on in the Renown track, DINARS. 2 DINARS that you can turn in for any raid item late in the season, assumingly. So what do you
Yeah, I
think,
mean
bro?
there's tons of stuff in here. So just to be clear, when they say inside Liberation of Undermine, that's specifically the raid?
Yeah. Liberation of Undermine is the raid.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just making sure because there's a lot of so basically they've added just like you said the Severed Strands buff where you get stronger and stronger as it goes on. You also get things like increased movement speed. And it continues scaling up too. Does it go to 30%, I think, by
Yeah, there's
Renown
10,
18?
20, and 30%. Yep.
Yeah, so basically they have a lot of interesting stuff in here that I think will make farming and reclearing like that's sort of what my vibe from this is trying to make farm better. And gosh, that's such a thing that hits home for me because I really do not like farm. But I do agree that having farm be enjoyable and something that's fun and easy is something that helps keep guilds together and keeps people playing. And so I love seeing things like not even just, the Severed Strands buff, but like the increased movement speed and the little like there's this one allowing you to access the auction house inside the Incontinental. Is that like I don't even know. Is that like I assume that's going to be either the beginning of the raid or like right outside the
No.
raid or something?
Do you know what
Oh,
have you heard? Have you watched
no.
John Wick?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Incontinental is supposedly the main hub of the Undermine, and it is a hotel. We don't know much else about it, but it's a reference to the Continental Hotel from John Wick.
Oh, right. But I mean like it's like the town right outside the raid probably, right? Or like very
It's
close to
probably
it.
somewhere there, yeah.
Yeah. So just little things that make the whole like raiding and farming and being around the raid. I really, really like. And then obviously the big one that you alluded to is uh receive a cartel chip to trade for a powerful item of your choice. So there's two of these, you said?
Yes, that's 17 and one at
17 and
19.
19?
Yep.
So here's the thing about Dinars, and everyone says, give me Dinars, give me Dinars. The weird thing about Dinars is like there are specific items in the raid that they make rare and they make OP and they're there on purpose. And having Dinars sort of defeats that purpose because, like, okay, well, if it's rare and OP, but then everybody just gets a Dinar and then buys that item, it's like, why does this item even exist, right? And so,
Yep.
while a lot of people have suggested to add Dinars, my suggestion is always just removing these stupid rare items. So the way that I'd imagine this plays out, just the fact that there's the Severed Strands buff, I would assume this whole Renown track is going to be heavily, heavily time gated.
Oh,
I don't
absolutely.
think this is going to be a thing where you can be max Renown on week 3. I think that you will like the amount of Renown that you can earn is going to be on heavy lockdown for this track. And so, I mean, if we compare it to now, like, what is the Severed Strands buff right now? Do you know? Is it like 15 or whatever
It's
around
going
there?
to be 13% ish.
Okay, so
Next
so 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 to put it into perspective, we wouldn't even be at 16 Renown right now. If they're keeping the same timeline, right? We
Yeah.
wouldn't even be at 6. So you wouldn't even have
We'd be
Dinars
here.
this late into the patch. If they're keeping the same timeline, which I would assume they're going to be somewhat close. So they're basically saying they're like I don't want to say clickbait, but it's like kind of fake to say we're giving you Dinars next patch because it's not like this is something that you're basically getting this at the very end of the patch, I assume. Like at the very earliest, probably like 2.5 to 3 months in the patch, I would have to guess.
Yeah.
Am I off base there?
Like it depends when they start it, because if you remember, the current buff started 6 weeks late. The like week 1 of what would be the current Renown track, which doesn't exist, was delayed 6 weeks. So realistically, we are technically between like 14 or like 15, we're like 14 and a half right now ish coming up. So if we assume 1 per week ish, because that's our best guess, that would put us at, we'd be done, right? Plus 6 weeks. We would be like this last week we would be at 20, meaning that like patch 1107 would have been your second dinar, and 2 weeks earlier would have been your first dinar, and that seems okay. But that's under the assumption that they released this Renown track week 1 of the raid, and
Yeah.
and that leaves the question: if week 1 of the raid, actually you're gonna start at week 1, but that's fine. Not gonna redo that math. That means that on the third week, again, assuming that it's 1 Renown per week, the third week you're going to get the 3% damage buff. That seems really early.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
especially
buy
compared
that. Yeah. I don't expect them to change it very radically from what they did this season. So I think unfortunately this is going to be everyone says, "Oh, sweet, Dinars are back," but you don't actually get them until way later, which is sort of along the lines of what I was saying, right? Like if you can just get the very rare item that you want 1 month into the patch, everybody can do it. It sort of defeats the purpose. Like, why is this even on the loot table? If it's just the thing that everybody picks. But like, if you think about the current raid, it's like, well, everybody's gonna pick whatever the trinket was, whether it's like Spy Masters or whatever, and then everybody's gonna pick either the knack or the cloak. And it's like, well, then why are these items even very
Yeah.
rare in the first place? So while I do think that having Dinars at the end of the patch is good, like I'm not saying this change is bad. I think people will be let down a little bit by this. They're gonna go into it with the expectation that Dinars are back, and then basically nothing has changed.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that Dinars don't let you buy the very rare items, which...
No, I think they will, but you just won't be
Yeah.
able to buy them until 3 months in or 4 months in when nobody will
Yeah,
really care.
I mean, we need to
is
know
what
more about the system, I think.
Yeah.
Like, if week 1 is, like, the week after Race to World First, so, like, week 2 or week 3 of the patch, I think that would leave it at a relatively okay pace. I think that would be okay. I would feel about
Okay
right,
at best. Okay at best.
Okay. I don't mind the current state of very rare items. They're like, if you don't get them, you're not missing out. It's no like Incarnate from Vault of the Incarnates, or Incarnate Icon, I think it was called. Like
Yeah.
that thing was a, if you didn't have it, you were significantly, hampered there. But at the very least, like the current ones, they're nice to have, but not crazy. And I think that's okay for me, and I don't mind them. If they went back to the
Yeah.
old style, yeah, DINARS, like, please give them to me. But in the current state, I'm okay if you can just buy them really late in the patch. I think most people around 1107 are kind of done at this point, right? Like you're not playing it at all. A lot of other people have burnt out. So for people who are still playing and invested, I think it's about the right time to give them those last few pieces that have eluded them for a while. Um,
I think it's fine. Yeah, it's a very small step in the right direction. We'll
yes.
say that.
The one thing that I wanted to ask you is like, how do you feel about it only being on raid items though? Do you think there should be a Mythic Plus Dinar?
Um,
Or this expanded to include Mythic Plus items?
I mean, I wouldn't be against it. Like the way I sort of see things is I don't really mind like I like loot being harder to get and the timeline being stretched out for like, 2 to 3 months. Like I don't really think you should be able to just like get myth track trinkets of whatever you want immediately on every character. But at the same time, like I think 2.5 to 3 months into a patch, once like a majority of the crowd has moved on, if you're still enjoying the game and playing, you should be able to basically just get what you want. Like I think in general, like the .07 patch or whatever, they should just like let loose and just like put a vendor in and let you buy, whatever shit and just like be able to play. Not everything for free, obviously, but like, they should have uncapped crests and maybe double the gilded crest drop rate and have vendors for all this stuff. It's kind of what I would like to see. And then at the same time, like that could be a good opportunity for not just M plus people, but for people trying to push cutting edge who are just like barely clearing the raid in the tier. That's kind of their last push of, okay, now we can make sure we get every trinket we need and every rare cape, and now we can finally make a push on the last couple like really tough bosses. It's kind of like if I had to envision how the system works, where they still keep that really fun progression for the first 2 months, but then allow the floodgates to open. I think a lot of people would. I think they would enjoy it, but they would still complain about it because it's like still hard to get those items in the first month or two, and that's when everybody's playing. So, but that's kind of how I envision an ideal system. So yeah, I think having some sort of dinar system in the like late stages of a patch is pretty good, even for M plus.
Yeah, overall, like I think it's exciting. I think we're gonna see how things play out. Like if this goes well and they're like, okay, yeah, we maybe agree with it, they might speed it up or they might expand it. Like I do think it sucks. Like, I've been chasing Sack Brood, myth track Sack Brood since the start of the expansion. Never seen one. We'll never at this point. I'm not doing keys anymore. So it would be nice to have. I'm not against it either. Just kind of like an interesting, will they ever expand this to Mythic Plus type thing? Because the only way to get stuff from that is Mythic Plus. So
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think yeah, I don't know. Again, I think I hate using the word clickbait, but it's not really clickbait. Like they're just posting the changes or whatever. But it's more so like I think it's gonna disappoint people a little bit when they see DINARS available, and it's like, yeah, but you can only get it on week 17 of the patch or whatever.
I Skarzard actually tweeted about it, and I'm sure he's gonna do a standard like massive blog post that I love because it's like super in depth. Here's our explanation of why we're doing it. Here's how it's gonna work. Here's how the catch up works. All this stuff because he writes really detailed pros and rewards, and I love that. So I'm sure we're gonna find out more how to get them soon after the holidays.
Yeah, I think a good sign from this patch too is that they've been listening to the feedback and they're really like in the weeds and changing stuff. And so I think this is, while it's a little bit weird that they kind of like threw all this stuff up for the holidays. Um, it also will be maybe an opportunity for them to kind of like just see the general feedback of what everyone has to say. They're going to hear our yapping and potty see and see whatever people are posting on the forums and Reddit and kind of like get an idea and still be able to make changes. But man, there was a lot of stuff going on. This is a pretty banger of an episode. There
Yeah.
was so much, and then there's still going to be more too. We got Christmas coming up, but
Yeah, I think like the last thing I'll say is Blizzard has seemingly taken a lot of the community's feedback, like very very receptive to it on affixes, on class trees. Like how long have people been saying about the the Druid class tree and stuff like that, the marksmanship hunter, and I think it's shown that they really care about player feedback now more than ever. I mean, especially with even like the Siren Isle stuff, like this ring sucks, please give us all gems. They did that within a couple days, and so like I really got to give props to Blizzard for really listening to the feedback from the community because it really does feel like they're listening more than ever right now.
Yeah, and people need to understand too that unfortunately, when it comes to a game like World of Warcraft, they just move really slow. Like when you're playing Marksmanship Hunter in the current expansion and you're like logging in every day and your class isn't getting invited or 12s are impossible, it can feel like, oh, nobody's listening. But I mean, like I feel like they're really increasing the pace that they've been making changes, and they made a lot of changes, honestly, that I didn't expect them to make, and they're trying things that I didn't expect them to try. So I'm really looking forward to this season. But I think that basically wraps up everything we wanted to talk about this patch. I think we should move on to Q&A. Tuttles, do you have any questions lined up? I think your cam's frozen.
Titles, you muted?
Wait, are you
Is he?
recording?